Hello, it's me, back again with another vlog. Today was a pretty chill day. Set up a Christmas tree, uh, finally, with my mom and dad today. So that was basically the most eventful thing I did today, was set up that tree. And I didn't end up meeting my friend today. I basically was like, hey, do you want to go on a date? And then he was like, sure, I'm down, but just letting you know I'm not looking for a relationship or a commitment at the moment, just because of my past shitty dating experiences. And I was like, honestly, that's fair. I'm okay with not having anything serious at the moment, but I obviously do want a relationship eventually, you know. But I'm okay with taking things one step at a time. I'm okay with taking things slowly. So yeah, that was about it for today, really. Um, Today I wrote a quick brainstorm about what kind of book I want to write. Like a book that I really want to write. Or like, I was thinking about like, what kinds of things do I want to talk about? Do I want to write about? And how do I make it unique to me? And I don't have a perfect idea right now, but I have an idea, which is basically like guy gets locked in his own home, um, basically lives a super sheltered life with his parents. His parents never let him leave the house. And then one day he gets curious and decides to set forth into this new world. And I kind of want to write it as a horror, but not like a monster horror or anything. I want to write a horror that has to do with like the real world. And I want to write it in a way that's as realistic as possible, something that other people can relate to in their daily lives. But with the current book idea I have, it doesn't really make sense because how often, like, no one's really locked in their homes per se. So maybe I should change it to something a bit more realistic. So maybe just like overbearing parents or very strict parents. I feel like that would get the idea that I want across easier. And I feel like it would just be easier to write that. Whereas if I were to do something where like the parents, lock the house down and so that their son can never leave, then I have to think about like the logistics of that. Like, how do they do that? Are the windows boarded? Like, where do they keep the keys to the lock? How has this kid not escaped yet until he's like an adult? There's like a lot of questions that go into something like that. And I think it might be easier to just stick to like as realistic as possible. But I could still add a twinge of fantasy in there. I'm just not sure how to do it yet. Because I want my main idea to be like about taking risks, about not being afraid to be yourself, not being afraid to do what you love, not being afraid to, be your true self. And I want to write about just like gay stuff. Like, that's the main reason I want to write. I just want to write something gay. I'm just thinking about how I'm going to go about doing that. Because I don't have anything definitive at the moment. All I know is that I want to write something gay. That's all I have. I don't know if I want to do a romance. I don't know if I want to do like a fantasy with like the analogy being like that they're gay. Like this kid is born and he's born a little bit different than everyone else. do I go like that way, or do I just straight up say like this character's gay? I feel like that's better, honestly. Um, and then by making it realistic, I can do more subtle, deeper meanings. Whereas if I make it too obvious, then it's like, what's the point of writing the book, right? A book is supposed to challenge you in some way, shape, or form, right? There's books out there that can be just like a light read, and that's fine. Books are for everyone, and there's a bunch of different types of books. But the book I want to write it about something meaningful, for me at least. Something that's also very, I want to write something like in an atmospheric way. I really like visual descriptions in storytelling, and I really want to show rather than tell, even though it's a book, so it's kind of hard to show. But that's why I like visual imagery, because it shows rather than tells. I don't want to like spell out the plot. I just want to like show it, if that makes sense. I don't want to like be too obvious about the meaning of the story. But I still want it to be obvious enough that that the reader can at least pick up what I'm putting down. I don't want it to be too obscure, because I need the average reader to be able to process what I'm reading, or what I'm writing, sorry. So how do I go about doing that? It's a tough thing to think about. The book that I just read, Death in Red Trilliums, it's essentially a gay love story, but it takes place in a zombie apocalypse. So there's a lot of, sad stuff as well, right? Because it's a zombie apocalypse, and it has, like other action oriented stuff. But that's not the main focus. Like, sure, it's a zombie apocalypse, but surprisingly, that's not the main focus of the book. The main focus of the book are like the dynamics between the characters, the relationships between the characters, and how they work together to make it through this apocalypse. How do they cope? How do they, stick together? How do they work together? It's got its own like mystery elements in it too. There's obviously some action with the zombies, but it's never the main focus of the book. It's more about love. Like, love and caring for others is like the deep rooted central meaning. And then the zombie apocalypse and all that other stuff reinforces that by putting the characters in situations where they're forced to love each other in order to make it through. Like, the mayor of the town has to, look after all of her people, and everyone like in the town knows each other because it's a small little town, and so it's like very like close, tight knit. Like the diner is like a hot spot for like connection and for like bringing people together in the story. And then obviously the main character, Corey, he falls in love with his bully, Jake Tannery. And I'm like, the enemies to lovers dynamic there is kind of crazy, but it's also very sweet, because you never would have thought that they would do that, but because of the situations that they've been put in, they were forced to essentially make amends, and eventually they fall in love because of that, which is very cute. And they become their own family, because Jake, he has a kid from his girlfriend, wife. I don't think it's explained, but her name is Tori, and then she leaves before the zombie apocalypse even happens. So he's a single dad with a 3-year-old son. And then him and Corey and Brett, his son, they get along all really well. And that's not to say they have their tough moments. Obviously, there's a lot of tough moments in the story. But the way their relationship blossoms and the way it progresses, I really like. And I think it's very cute and very sweet. And it was a very easy read. It wasn't like too convoluted. It was very easy to just like pick up and just read. I read the full thing in like 8 hours. So it was like it was a page turner, but it wasn't a page turner in the sense that there was a lot going on. It was just like, I don't know how to explain it. It was just, I found it really enjoyable to read, but not because there was something going on every single moment. It's hard to explain, but I just found the relationships between the characters to be so authentic, and the situations that they were in felt very, like real. Like I could imagine them. I could really visualize it. It just felt very authentic, and I really liked the way the things progressed in the story event-wise. Like it all just flowed very seamlessly. And I don't know, I feel like that's something I struggle with a lot, because it's like, now what? Like, this event has been completed. Now your characters need something else to continue the story along. Your characters need a new plot point or a new quest or a new something to keep the story going. And I think the author did a really good job at finding those things to keep the story going. It was always something like, oh, the mayor needs help doing this, or you owe me a favor with this, so let's do this, or hey, we should probably do this for the zombie apocalypse, so let's go out hunting together, or practice, like our hunting skills or whatever. And there's always a reasoning for the characters to do something, which I really liked. And they got involved in a way that wasn't overbearing. Like, I could see why the characters did what they did. And it all just felt very realistic, and it wasn't too, it wasn't too overboard with the action, which I liked, honestly. It wasn't the main focus of the story. It did have to come in at certain points to progress the plot, which I honestly don't mind. Like, those were probably some of the highlights, honestly, because they were big turning points. But I think that's what made them so much more noticeable, is because for a zombie book, there aren't a lot of zombies. Like, it is kind of crazy to think about how little zombies there are in this book. But it makes sense because it's a small town, it's very secluded, and they're very just like tight-knit. Obviously the whole rest of the world has gone to hell, but this one secluded town is like a safe haven for a large part of the book. They do have their like moments where there's like a small zombie invasion, but it's nothing like too crazy. Like, there aren't like hordes of zombies. I think at most there was like 12 zombies at like one point when they were like blockading one of the main roads, so that it was like a wall or something. I think there were like 12 zombies or something, and there were like 4 of them, so it was like 3 zombies per person. I think there was another scene another major scene where there were more, but they didn't specify the number of zombies there. So I'm guessing it could have been like a lot higher than I imagined for that particular part, but they didn't interact with those zombies as much as they did with the other ones. It was just like a couple zombies were in their way. It wasn't like a horde or a swarm where there were like hundreds of zombies. No, it was like, at least in my mind, I envisioned like max 20 zombies or something. Which is still quite a lot, but not like nearly as much as other, zombie stories, zombie fiction, you know what I mean? So, but honestly, I like that because it wasn't the main focus, right? Sure, like it's a zombie apocalypse. A lot of the stuff they did do was because of the zombie apocalypse. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a perfect plot point, but that's not like the main focus in the sense of that's the message of the story. The main message of the story is to like love the people around you, appreciate the people who are in your life, and to like find a family if you don't have a biological family. It's a lot about found family in this one because the protagonist, Corey, he doesn't have any biological family left because his mother died of cancer and his father is nowhere to be seen. We find out later that he died getting to the airport because he was going to meet up with him at one point, but once the zombie apocalypse hit, he couldn't do that anymore, and I think he died. But basically, he never meets his dad again in the story, which is kind of sad. But he does find a family with, the people at the diner that he works with, Lee and Patty. They feel like mother figures to him. And then Mary, especially, poor Mary, oh my gosh. Mary is the mother of Jake Tannery. And in the story, she's like always super nice, super friendly. She's a Christian, so she's like very, she has like a cross around her neck at all times. And in the beginning, Corey was like very reluctant to meet this Mary because obviously she was the one that raised Jake, the person who used to bully him in high school. And so he thought that his mom would be a nightmare. But turns out she was actually really, really nice and was actually happy that Corey met Jake because it wasn't the mom that had a bad influence on Jake. It was his friends, Alex and Brian. We hate Alex and Brian in this household because they were the ones that were a bad influence on Jake. But once Corey came into Jake's life after the zombie apocalypse, things started changing. He started being more like his old self. He started being more kind and sweet and caring, which was especially needed now that the zombie apocalypse was happening and he has a single child to take care of all by himself. And spoiler alert, Mary dies, and it's so sad, and it's like super traumatic for Jake. Like, he's like literally in the way it happens is just so heartbreaking because like earlier on in the book, they're having a family dinner with, Corey, Jake, his mom, and the kid, and it was like a really good dinner, and it was like so lighthearted. And Mary was talking about like Mary knows at this point that Corey and Jake are like flirting, or at least are like, something, like she knows that, like, I'm pretty sure she knows that Jake is not straight. So she was like, hinting at them being together, and she was like totally fine with it. And she was like even giving them privacy and stuff, and was kind of just like kind of like a wing woman in a way. Like she was very just like supporting and super nice and always very sweet and very just like caring, as a mother should be. And then she dies. She fucking dies. Not because of a zombie too. She got murdered. That's the worst part. She got freaking murdered by Alex. Isn't that crazy? Because she wasn't a good enough Christian or some shit, because she likes gay people. Absolutely ridiculous reasoning, by the way. But that's just another good reason to hate Alex. Fuck you, Alex, the character. Oh my goodness. What a piece of shit. And what a manipulative piece of shit as well. Because in the story, we're like, oh my gosh, there were like 2 other murders before Mary. And we were like, oh my god, if it wasn't a zombie that killed them, then who was it? It must have been someone in this town that murdered them. And I never would have expected it to be Alex, of all people. Literally, I had no inkling that it was him until the very end when it was revealed. Which it was revealed because of Brett saying like, oh, I heard Alex's voice talking to grandma before she died. And so that's how we find out that it was Alex and not Julian, Alex's father, who did the murders. Because it was Alex who tricked people into thinking that it was his own dad that did the murders. And so then they were going after his dad. But it wasn't him. And they all got tricked. And so they were basically all on the verge of getting killed until Corey sweeps in, realizing this. And he almost dies himself. He gets stabbed in the shoulder. But he eventually saves the day. And then it's all good afterwards. Still sad because Mary's dead, so they're in the morgue and like mourning and stuff. And obviously Julian, the dad, is still mourning his own son's death, even though he was a piece of shit for murdering 2 other people. It's happy, but it's sad. I don't know how to describe it. Melancholy, I guess, because knowing that at the end that they start to, form this family together, and that things are starting to look more positive. It's nice. I really do like that. But obviously there's still no zombie apocalypse and Mary's gone. But they have each other now, so that's nice. Sorry, that was such a tangent right there. Just me talking about this book. That I forgot about my own book that I want to write. I don't know where to begin with my own book. Writing a book is so daunting. There's so much to think about. Like, plot-wise. You have to know the entire book, basically, before you start writing it. Technically, you don't. But it makes it a lot easier to have at least a general idea of start, middle, end, hook. Having a general plot line sorted before you start writing. Because if you just start writing aimlessly, it's going to be hard to finish that book, man, when you don't know what the ending is supposed to be before you start writing. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. I need to just think of a book idea. And that's why I like fantasy, because fantasy, it allows a quick and easy access into ideas. And maybe I should do that. I'm just trying to think, how would I do that? What kind of setting do I want? Do I want to do horror? Do I want to do fantasy? Do I want to do romance even? I don't know, man. I want to go for something more realistic, but I don't know how to write an interesting story without incorporating fantasy. Maybe that's my challenge. I'm really good at or I really enjoy the idea of writing something fictional in a fantasy setting or a horror setting, something that's not real. But in order for me to tell the story that I want to tell, it's best if I write it as realistic as possible. That means I can't use ghosts or zombies or monsters as an analogy for anything. No, I just have to rely on good storytelling, which is very doable now that I think about it. You don't need those things. You just need a good situation or a good plot or a good something to enable the characters to start acting on something. For the book I read, it was a zombie apocalypse that started the action for the characters to switch up what they were used to doing and switching up their daily lifestyle. How would I do that for my book without relying on zombies or some other fantastical situation? How would I do that in the real world, in a real life situation? The first thing that comes to mind is like getting locked in your own house or getting stuck somewhere with someone else and you have to figure out a way to escape, or something along those lines where you're stuck and you can't get out, like stuck in an elevator, or I hate to say this, but like a school shooting, something where like something realistic, which sucks that that's realistic. So like something where like these characters are put into a situation, whether it's an unfortunate one or a good situation, and they have to resolve or cooperate together to deal with that issue. And I'm like, okay, well, based on the message that I want to write, which is, take risks, maybe I should do something like public speaking related. I don't know. There's so many different avenues you can take. It's really daunting to think about. But I think the easiest way for me to do something, at least semi-realistic, is to just think of what I want to write. Think of something fun. Like what is a fun situation to be in, or a fun situation to write about that's realistic? At least to some extent realistic. And I'm just thinking like maybe a house party gone awry, or like a murder mystery of some sort, or like stranded on an island, something kind of realistic but out there, because I don't want to write about the mundane life, although that would be an interesting challenge. You need your characters to have some sort of motivation to keep the progress of the story going, to keep the plot going. It's really difficult to think about how I would do that. What kind of situation do I want to put my characters in that prompts action or change? That's the tough part. The thought that I had at first was a character who grows up never being able to leave their house. Ever. Like they were locked in since birth by their parents, weren't allowed to leave because it's dangerous or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that's not really, like, realistic. I could do something where he was, like, homeschooled, but then it's like, I don't know. I'll think about this as I go to bed, because this vlog has been going on for far too long. So I'll get back to y'all tomorrow. I have a long day tomorrow, long 9-hour shift tomorrow, so I probably won't be talking about books tomorrow, but we'll see. So I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Either way, see ya.